Guilfoyle, along with Richard Fowler, Pete Hegseth, Dana Perino, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. President Trump delivering on another one of his campaign promises, calling for tougher immigration laws. The president hosted a roundtable with police, congressmen, and local leaders on Long Island, New York, an area hit hard by the murderous MS-13 gang.
We're here today to discuss the menace of MS-13. It's a menace. They exploited the loopholes in our laws to enter the country as unaccompanied alien minors. They look so innocent. They're not innocent. Crippling loopholes in our laws have enabled MS-13 gang members and other criminals to infiltrate our communities. And Democrats in Congress refuse to close these loopholes, including the disgraceful practice known as catch and release.
The president also calling out Democrats who he says came to the defense of MS-13 gang members after he called them animals.
I noticed recently where Democrats, Nancy Pelosi as an example, are trying to defend MS-13 gang members. I called them animals the other day, and I was met with rebuke. They said, they're people. They're not people. These are animals. And we have to be very, very tough.
Meanwhile, a local police commissioner sounding the alarm on just how dangerous these gangs are to communities.
We need help. When we have 40% of our homicides, and we had record low homicides last year, 40% are MS-13 related, and out of that 6 that they committed, 4 of them were butchered with machetes and buried into graves, shallow graves that the families can't not only identify but can't find. We need that support from the president. We have him watching our back now. He's supporting our enforcement efforts, but we can also use some funding now from D.C.
Okay, so the president tackling this issue head on, Greg, and doubling down. He faced criticism. He said he faced rebuke for calling and identifying specifically gang members from MS-13, calling them animals. He repeated that today and then had some evidence to back it up from the local authorities.
Well, politically, this is a big win for him. In this issue, Trump's stance will register. For Trump, the MS and MS-13 stands for must stop. For the Democrats, MS and MS-13 stands for misunderstood. And the more he shows the contrast, the better it is, because the media and the Democrats, they continually with Trump, they get bogged down in language and they always lose. They're so worried about the words, and it reveals the lopsided priorities. So you got a president who's worried about jobs, terror, North Korea, gangs. Meanwhile, you have another side that's concerned that he called gang members animals. It's like, imagine your house being on fire and your neighbors are complaining that the fire engines are too loud. That's what this is. Democrats worrying about what you call gang members. Our neighbors saying, hey, could your fire engines keep it down while the house burns? It's exactly that.
Can you imagine? Okay, so the 3 alarm has been sent here on Dana for MS-13. Obviously, something needs to be done about it. I saw you reacting to the statistics in terms of the number of homicides.
40%.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And the heinous nature of the crimes that they commit.
Well, I talked to a former prosecutor today who did a lot of these cases, especially in Maryland, who said that he thinks of MS-13 as the mafia of our generation, and that one of the ways that they've gone after them is like they used to do for the mob through RICO, which is racketeering something and something. I can't remember the exact words, but so I asked, well, then what laws, as the president said today, like we need Congress to do something, what do you think Congress could do that could actually help law enforcement? And he said that he does believe that the lax borders is a huge problem because of the ability to regenerate, and that they're recruiting at younger and younger ages, and that this brutality is, he said, it's almost ISIS-like in the killing,
yes,
in the way, and it's ratcheting up and it's getting worse. He also said that MS-13 was in about 10 states in 2005, and by the late 2000s in all 50 states. The one thing I think today was important to bring attention to it. I did note that in Connell McShane, when he was doing the reporting for us today, that there is a local Democratic congressman who was not invited to today's meeting, and I think that was a mistake. I think because he said he would have gone if he had been invited. And why not try to co-opt some of them, Democrats, so that you can actually make this a bipartisan issue and leave the people who want to call it, who want to make fun of the president for saying animals, like they'll just have to deal with their own politics on that side. But if you really want to solve the problem, you will need Democrats, and the local congressman is probably a good place to start.
That's a really good point in terms of a takeaway of a good event today can be even better if you do something like that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the sheer numbers, great point, Dana. 2,000 members of MS-13 on Long Island alone. And the backdrop behind the president said, secure our borders, protect our communities. And one of the participants said, you can't protect our communities until you secure our borders. And the president has that wide view. They do regenerate. Yeah. And the contrast you see between the folks yelling about the animals comment is, the president wants the rule of law, enforcing the laws we have versus lawlessness. He wants borders versus open borders. He believes merit-based immigration is better than the Russian roulette, not to use Russia, but the Russian roulette of who knows who's coming, why they're coming, what their intentions are. And Greg, to your point, MS-13 is the perfect example. This president identifies opportunities to expose the left and the insanity that they pursue, catch and release sanctuary cities. And MS-13 is that example, and everyone knows it. And it's a real problem for real people in their lives. And I think he's hit the nail on the head on this one.
Yes, and so it's really an unfortunate position the left finds themselves in, Richard, that they're defending these kind of criminals.
Defend all of them, Richard.
Lawless criminals, that now the proliferation is spread to all 50 states. When you liken them to ISIS, it seems like perfectly appropriate because they are domestic terrorists in terms of the crime, the racketeering, the murders that they carry out.
So listen, here's my take on this. So when President Trump made the animals comment, he complained that he was taken out of context, and he was. And what he's doing to Nancy Pelosi now is taking her out of context completely. Nancy Pelosi's argument was a larger narrative about what the president's rhetoric on immigration overall and how this animal comments bleeds into that larger narrative. It was nothing to do with MS-13. If you ask any Democrat on Capitol Hill, they would say, yes, MS-13 is heinous, they're awful, and that's why we have laws like RICO and other laws to make sure that gangs like that in this country don't spread. But you have to separate MS-13 from those individuals from the dreamers. You have to separate MS-13 from the... Wait a minute, let me finish. No, she did not. Let me finish. But think about the mother who left Guatemala or Nicaragua or El Salvador, the three most dangerous countries on earth, when they walk 3,000 miles with all their belongings and their children to seek freedom and to seek the American dream. They are nowhere near what MS-13 is.
That's what he was referring to that.
But that's my point. When you cannot conflate, you have to separate the two.
She purposely conflates. She says when Trump says MS-13 are animals, he's calling all immigrants animals.
No. That is not what Leader Pelosi said. Leader Pelosi,
because they believe Trump is racist, and so they want to make people think that he's racist. Right?
Listen, you just twisted a whole bunch of things to create alternative facts. Here's what Nancy
Oh, no, you didn't.
What Nancy Pelosi was trying to say was the president's rhetoric overall, when he came down the golden staircase and called Mexicans rapists and murderers, right? The rhetoric leads to the problem, not what he said about MS-13.
All right, let me respond to that. The argument that you're using is that it really doesn't matter what Trump said now, it's what he said then.
Yes. Which was 3 years ago.
Yeah, and also one could argue what he meant back then is exactly what he meant now, but he did it in a sloppy way. But the fact is, this argument cannot work. You know, if I didn't rob a bank, but maybe in the past I might have, so he's probably guilty. If he's not guilty now, he was probably guilty then. It's an illogical argument. Right. You can't say, and I used this analogy before, when you find a hate crime and it turns out to be false, the left says, well, it's false here, but it could be true somewhere else. It's actually a deflection from actually just admitting Trump was right, and people like Pelosi are conflated.
By the way, if you care about public safety and you care about citizens in the communities being able to go to work, to take their kids to school, why would you take the side of people who are coming in, committing heinous crimes, murders,
Nobody's
and
taking
making
the side of MS-13.
Well, but
why are you in MS-13?
I am not. I don't even know MS-13. I've never even seen them. But my point.
I have. This is the thing.
No, I get that. But
why are you denying this?
We can all agree at this table that he is taking Nancy Pelosi out of context. Can we agree on that point?
I don't think so. No.
She did not say that.
She took him out of context, and then he responded
by taking her out of context.
I think that the left has played this incorrectly from a strategic standpoint. This is a community that you would think would actually like it if the Democrats said, we understand that you're not like them.
They're preying.
But
yes.
we are going to protect you by going after them. Like, I think that the strategy on all this doesn't make any sense.
Just admit one time the president might be right. Same thing with
First of all, I will admit when the president's right, I will give the president kudos for being right. But here, my argument is he is conflating regular immigrants who are coming here trying to seek the American dream.
Nancy Pelosi is doing that.
We're going to agree to disagree on that because a little bit heated there, but a little bit heated over here. Watch this heated exchange between the head of ICE and Democratic California Congresswoman Nanette Barragán for suggesting his organization was anti-immigrant.
We love to paint immigrants as criminals. That is not the complete facts. It makes me sick to my stomach to keep hearing over and over again, painting the broad stroke and the picture as though these are folks who are coming here to do harm.
First of all, no one on this panel is anti-immigrant. We're law enforcement officers who enforce the law that you all enacted. So to sit there and say that we're anti-immigrants is wrong.
All right, Greg, so people taking offense if you say, okay, anti-immigrant, they're not saying they're anti-immigrant. They are for upholding the laws that are on the books. How is that anti-immigrant? How is that racist to enforce the law and ensure public safety?
Again, it's an example of conflation, and it happens a lot. Like, we've been in this situation where we will talk about Islamic terrorism, and people will accuse you of Islamophobia.
Thank you.
It's like, but I'm not actually talking about Islam. I'm talking about terrorists who happen to be Islamic terrorism. I didn't say Islam, and therefore people go, no, you are Islamophobic. This is the same argument. It's like, how dare you come out against gangs who happen to be of a specific minority? You don't like that minority. No, you are actually guilty of doing that. If you hear MS-13 and hear innocent immigrants, that's on you, not anybody else.
By the way, do you see one of these definitions in the dictionary of animal is an inhuman person, brutish or beast-like person? So
that's why that
to
guy,
the president.
My nickname in the gym.
But that's why the MS-13 gang member called himself Animal.
No, a lot of people, that's their nickname. A lot of athletes.
That's why it's like ISIS.
Wrestlers.
They pride themselves in that. Mm-hmm. You know, who can be more brutal?
But did you notice in that hearing where the congresswoman was there, there was nobody else. No other congressional member was there to question.
I've literally testified in front of congressional committees where there's nobody there.
Listen, I've said this argument over and over. When it comes to immigration and it comes to actually passing comprehensive immigration reform, because our laws were made in 1984, Congress is missing in action. They're missing in action.
Also, it was a really nice day.
Well, they're
It was a really nice day.
but not MS-13.
Spring.
There's some good things from 1984, though.
All right, well, we won that argument.
Generally.
Okay, the NFL announces new rules for national anthem protests. Do they go far enough? That fascinating debate next.
When people like yourselves turn on television and you see those people taking the knee when they're playing our great national anthem,
That was President Trump criticizing NFL players who kneel during the national anthem. Well, the NFL adopting new rules today to deal with this controversial issue. Teams can now be fined if players decide to take a knee and don't show respect for the flag, in quotes. The league is also removing the requirement that players be on the field during the national anthem. The NFL's Players Union is saying it was not consulted about the change and could challenge it if necessary. So this is a story we covered all year. Now the NFL is gearing up for next year. And Pete, they're trying to get ahead of this. How do you think they came down?
Not perfect, but good. I mean, this is a good development. I think the president was effective. The NFL was feeling the heat. The fans will ultimately decide because the locker room will become the new kneeling. I mean, what it says is if you're on the field, you must stand, but you don't have to be on the field. And the policy says, shall stand and show respect for the flag and the anthem. So it's not just standing, it's respect for the flag and the anthem. That's what the president talks about all the time. You live in this country, you have the privilege of playing a game for millions of dollars that affords you that opportunity. Stand for the anthem. The NFL responded. Listen, their ratings took a hit. Their attendance took a hit.
And their fans didn't like it.
And their fans didn't like it. And they responded to it. And we'll see how it develops. What's going to matter is how the players react, because the only people fined are not the players. The teams are fined.
Yes, yeah.
So how does that dynamic happen if a bunch of players get together and say we're kneeling and my team gets fined? I mean, that's on the coaches and the owners. So it's not a perfect solution. It feels like a half measure, but it's a hat tip to our president who says patriotism matters in this country.
Well, and I guess one of the things was that you don't have to be on the field. So if you don't want to stand for the national anthem, you can hang out in the locker room.
Yes, always a fun time.
Like everybody will be.
Anyway, you know what the thing is? It makes this political expression is no different to me than the celebration excess that you see. They're both that you should be penalized for unsportsmanlike conduct. And so celebration excess is unsportsmanlike. Introducing politics into a game is unsportsmanlike. It's a sport, so it's unsportsmanlike. I said this when it had to be a year and a half ago. And I said, like, imagine if our viewers turned on the 5 and instead of doing political conversation, we were throwing the ball around for an hour. How upset would they be? That's no different than turning on NFL and having somebody introduce politics into something that is supposed to be enjoyable. And finally, if you really believe politically in something, there has to be a risk. So my suggestion is that you do it within the game. You actually kneel in the field, because that incurs a cost against your team.
Second down on the safety.
Just take a knee, get the ball and take a knee and see what happens, because then that shows real guts.
All right, KG, what do you think?
Yes, it'll be a flag.
Before we get Richard in here, because he's like bursting.
Yes, he's bursting. He's bursting. I think this was a win for the president because he really took the forefront on this issue and stepped out on it. He got a lot of criticism, but he didn't back down on it because he thought, well, you should stand. You should stand for the men and women that serve in this country, for the flag, from the pleasure and privilege that we all get to be able to do our jobs, for them to be able to get on a field, for people to root for them or root against them, and show some respect for the military that serves, because this became incredibly distracting, upsetting, because people were all different kinds of causes and all of a sudden saying they were changing the issue. If you want to be socially active and you're upset about police, etc., go out, talk to them, work with your communities, etc. That's what you can do. Is a better, more productive way than showboating.
Richard, listen to this. The Jets chairman, Christopher Johnson, says that this is his take on it, that if somebody on the Jets takes a knee, that fine will be borne by the organization, by me, not the players. I never want to put restrictions on the speech of our players. Do I prefer that they stand? Of course, but I understand if they felt the need to protest. What do you think of his comment?
I agree with that. And here's the thing. I have big problems with Roger Goodell. Huge problem. I think most people at the table have problems with Roger Goodell, and I think he's got to go.
Yes.
He owes me money.
But I think there's a couple of other problems with this particular rule. Number one, there were no players in this meeting when the decision was decided. The Players Association was left out of it. It was a bunch of owners who got in the room and made a decision without consulting the people.
You don't think that's fair?
I think that's totally unfair, because the football is not football without the players. Period.
Players have been consulted. There's millions of dollars going to players.
Yeah, but you're not consulting. But you're not consulting their official representation.
But if the corporate makes a decision and we're the employees, we have to follow it. We don't get to get it. We're not in on every.
But there's a distinction here, because the NFLPA, they have a contract with the NFL, and when you levy a fine, that contract has to be negotiated by the official representation for the players.
And the fine's not hitting the players; it's hitting the owners.
But it doesn't matter. Anytime there's a new fine, the players have to be party to that conversation. Number one.
But we don't go to any at Fox, we're not showing.
We don't
get to go to the meetings, and they talk about us all the time, Richard.
Especially you, Greg.
Yes.
But the other problem I have, and I think this rule is very vague. The ideal of respect for the flag. So does that mean they're going to close every concession stand at the stadium? Does that mean they're going to force every fan to take a hat off? Where does
they
this
should
end?
Actually, I would love that.
But this is the question. This is a very vague rule.
Well,
it's written very vaguely, and it's written to punish players for using their First Amendment right.
They're not paying
let's be very clear.
Owners.
The flag is nothing without our Constitution and the First Amendment to that Constitution, the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression.
So it is about the flag.
I mean,
so it is about the flag. I thought it was about police brutality, but I guess it is about the flag.
No, it's about the First Amendment.
Kimberly and I can't come here and wear T-shirts that have like a bad word written on them. That would be against company policy.
Yes.
Companies
but
get
it
to have
would be my First Amendment right to walk around in the street with it.
Exactly, yes.
I agree.
Yes, that's apples and oranges. When taking a knee before this whole controversy was a sign of reverence. Remember, Jesus took a knee in the Garden of Gethsemane. It has always been. Listen, taking a knee.
Don't pretend like they were showing any semblance of reverence. Are you really going to go there?
Has always been a sign of reverence. They're not putting a fist up. They're taking a knee when the pledge is happening. That's all they've done.
You accuse me of alternative facts. That's the key of alternative facts.
How is that alternative facts?
That's not how you kneel in church.
They should have knelt in front of a police station.
Yes.
If that's the case, why
People
kneel in
that-
front of the flag?
When the coach is talking to the players, everybody take a knee so you can hear me and hear me talking to
what?
you. It is a sign of reverence.
I actually
They can do it when they're
respect
not
that
playing
way
the
you're
game.
going with this because it's so clever.
Well,
Wow,
he
we're gonna have to end it there, Richard. You got to end it clever.
Yeah.
All right, new reaction from the president on the Russia investigation and reports of an FBI informant in his campaign. Next.
Thank you, DJ. All right, President Trump is unveiling a new nickname for the latest development in the Russia investigation. He's calling it Spygate. It's involving the FBI informant and his campaign. Well, the president is also taking aim at James Comey and James Clapper, the Jims, who are saying the FBI did nothing wrong.
The Jim.
We now call it Spygate. You're calling it Spygate. A lot of bad things have happened. When they look at the documents, I think people are going to see a lot of bad things happen. I hope it's not so. I mean, if you look at Clapper, he sort of admitted that they had spies in the campaign yesterday inadvertently. But I hope it's not true, but it looks like it is. I think James Comey's got a lot of problems. If you look at what he did, if you look at all of the lies, the tremendous lies, if you look at all that's going on, I think James Comey's got a lot of problems.
The president's comments come ahead of tomorrow's meeting between GOP Chairman Devin Nunes, Trey Gowdy, and top DOJ, FBI, and intelligence officials. Richard, I'm going to come to you first. You deserve first word here. So James Clapper, literally, these words came out of his mouth.
The Jims.
The Jims. They were spying. Okay, that was said as part of the quote. He said, and James Comey, he says, well, no, it's not spying. Let me give you the technical term. It's called confidential human sources. So because he knows the technical term and Trump uses spying, somehow he's more sophisticated and it was all meant for his good. James Clapper admitted the same thing. He spied, but it was good for him. At what point is there an acknowledgement from the left that there was legitimate political espionage going on against a candidate running for president?
So I have a question for you.
Oh, please.
What you want from the FBI and the Department of Justice is accountability and transparency, right?
Oh, someday, yes.
So that's the same thing that Black Lives Matter and all those other groups have been asking for from police departments all across the country. We want accountability.
We're not talking
But it's the
about
same.
that.
No, but it is the same thing. It is absolutely the same thing. Law enforcement being
We've
accountable
got body cams
to
and all that.
people.
We're not talking about Black Lives
Period.
Matter. We're talking about the president being spied
The
on.
president is asking for the same thing that activists all across this country have been
we're not
asking
talking
for.
about that. We're talking
So should the
about-
FBI be wearing body cams? Is that where you want to go?
Maybe we'll know if they were spying on the president or not.
Or what if
So
the
their
informants
spies
were
have
wearing a
body
wire?
cams?
We don't know if this
I mean, that's beyond the point. The other point is that there's no facts here, right? That's number one. Number two, all the informants were. This all happened after the formal FBI investigation was triggered, and according to the Nunes memo that he released, that FBI investigation was triggered by George Papadopoulos being drunk in London.
Well,
That's the last line of the memo. And after the Australians called our intelligence agency and said, hey, listen, you have a Trump associate over here saying he's got all this information, the FBI started to investigate it. And part of investigating is figuring out what are the Russians doing, how they're engaging in our elections. So that's exactly what happened.
Kimberly, yet they
It's
never
so
told the campaign.
Right. It's so disingenuous. Now because they got caught with the hand in the cookie jar, now they're like, oh, wait, it wasn't me. We were just trying to do this to help you out because we didn't want you to eat all those cookies. So we just dipped into the jar. It makes no sense because the bottom line is they knew what they were doing and they were engaged in an active, ongoing, politically motivated spying operation against a political candidate. That there's no other way to slice it. And the Inspector General over the next few months is going to be releasing a series of IG reports that can be incredibly devastating and damning to the CIA, to the DOJ, to the FBI. So that's where your transparency is going to come through and that's why you see New York Times and some of the other mainstream media enablers trying to get out ahead of the story to preempt because they know the thunder is coming.
Yeah. Dana, the president tweeted earlier today, it's clear that quoting Judge Andrew Napolitano, it's clear that they had eyes and ears all over the Trump campaign. So you could sweat the details, how many informants, this or that, but they were clearly focused on getting to know what Trump was doing.
And I'm totally willing to believe that all of that happened, but I do go back to when the president, we just showed in the clip, he said, I hope it's not true, but it looks like it is. So maybe they'll get some more information tomorrow at this briefing. The weird thing was it was only for Republicans, and I do think that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer were right to say there is the Gang of Eight, which is the ability to make us remember that was where the enhanced interrogation techniques were briefed. It never leaked. Nobody ever complained about it. It's a pretty safe operation to be able to put forward this information. I asked Trey Gowdy today on the 2 o'clock show if he would be willing to have them come. He said he wasn't in charge of the invite list, and if they could come and not leak, that would be great.
That was a good interview.
I love how James Comey was asked about this, I don't know where, and he said, how will Republicans explain this to their grandchildren? And I figure it's easy. You say this, you know President Barron Trump? Well, his dad was unjustly persecuted by deep state agents who failed to see the greatness of Donald Trump. This is just a simple comparison, okay? How can the media go crazy over a meeting with a woman over the Baginski Act and Donald Trump Jr., but they dismiss all of this other activity as a nothing caviar, i.e. Fusion GPS, the spies, the dossier funded by Hillary. So all of that is nothing. But if you repeat that simple comparison, comparing that to a meeting with a woman who tried to get in there to talk about the Baginski Act, that reveals the bias. If you are embracing one side of this story while dismissing the other side, betrays a certain measure of hackiness. So I think we can all agree at this point to bury the hatchet on this Russian mess and focus on how it can't happen in the future. Right. We all agree. We don't want the Russians to be interfering. We don't want anybody interfering with our elections. Right. So let's just
pass some laws and strengthen our elections. And maybe if you invite Democrats to the meeting, we could work together to get something done.
But they never stop talking.
Well, sorry, Devin Nunes leaks way more than the Gang of Eight.
Whoa.
Devin Nunes is the biggest leaker that I know.
That's what the Democrats should do. Bring Chick-fil-A to a meeting. You'll be welcome.
I'm going to have to contest Barron being the heir. Maybe it is. I think it's going to be Eric Trump. Just saying. Making that up. All right. Parents sue to kick out their unemployed. They got a 30-year-old son. He lives in their basement. Greg's going to react to it. Coming up next. Now what you hear is not a test.
On Tuesday, a New York State judge ordered a 30-year-old man to clear out of his parents' house. Michael Rotondo didn't pay rent or do chores. Basically, he's a tiny version of Congress. And so he was finally sued by mom and dad after he refused to leave. A self-employed businessman. The parents have yet to see any of Michael's secret source of income. Right? I'm beginning to wonder what that is. His parents' home was actually a sanctuary city, and he, a sponge approaching 31, reaped the benefits. Apparently, thinking everything should be free, he almost qualifies as a commencement speaker, or at least a Vermont senator.
Huh?
Yeah. Finally, after a pile of ignored eviction letters, the judge ruled for mom and pop, and he had to move out. But being good parents, they offered him money to find a place to stay and to fix his car, secretly hoping he might leave town. But they also gave him sound advice, including, quote, organize the things you need for work and manage an apartment. And, quote, sell the other things that have any significant value. That's pretty good. And he added this. There are jobs available even for those with a poor work history like you. It's so true. Get one. You have to work. Translation, get off your butt and do something with your life. So now evicted, he worried about what's best for him, which was the advice just given. He did see his parents again after the ruling and said it was pretty awkward. On the bright side, he could always move into a Starbucks.
Oh, my gosh. This is the problem. That's why I'm going Dunkin' Donuts.
Yes.
They wouldn't allow any of this.
You know, Kimberly, this guy's all over the news. He's going to be on Martha McCallum tonight.
I know.
I'm very excited. I moved in with my mom when I was 23. I stayed for a year. I thought it was pretty good. Is this kid pushing it?
Yeah, I think he's pushing it because then didn't he go back to their house after the judge told him get a life, get a job, and then he's like, knock, knock, who's there? Me again. Yeah, so he's showing up to he's probably going to go find some unfortunate individual that'll take him in because he's got his 15 minutes of fame and they're like taking selfies with this guy. And then when that happens and passes over, then I don't know what he's going to do. He's probably going to move back in with his parents. But I mean, what kind of self-respect does he have? Look at these parents. They're so sweet. Look at them. They're
How are you going to get a girl?
Well, this is what I'm saying. Like, well, he got one for a second, I guess. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you know.
You know what the solution is?
Transacted for a
Richard,
moment.
is you just move in and become somebody's butler. Just become a butler. And so but a really
24/7
bad one. A really lazy butler.
Or like a house,
lazy Susan.
Yeah, or like a Kato Kalin or something.
My only problem with this is that I think the word millennial in the screen behind me, because all millennials are. It is.
You feel like it's like speaking to you?
No, because listen, I moved
It's
out
true.
I packed up and I went to college at 18, and I was like, Mom, I'm never coming back home. She's like, you can always come home, and I'm like, no, I'm going to get a job and I'm going to work, and that's what all my friends did, and we're all doing great, and we're all millennials, and there's tons of millennials that work at this fine organization,
I love
Fox News Channel,
millennials.
and
I
they
love
work
them.
and they have their own apartments, and they don't live at home with their parents, and they pay rent.
Do you want
There you go.
to hear from him? This was
Yes,
on
I gotta hear his voice.
This is on an earlier show on a network. I can't think of the name of it.
Okay, fine.
Starts with C.
Do you not want to find your own place?
No,
Why not?
I don't want to live there anymore.
You don't want to live with your
I don't
parents?
like living with. No.
Why don't
Right.
you just move out of your parents' house, like tomorrow?
I don't have the means to do that tomorrow.
Okay.
So-
Do you have a job?
No.
Then we wish we could. Please take a sip of your water. Don't you want to reconcile with them?
No.
Oh my God.
Oh boy.
He needs a media
I
coach.
kind of feel bad.
Yeah, do you feel bad for him? Do you think there might be
I always feel bad for everybody. It's
Yeah,
the
you
same
do.
thing.
But then he's doing the TV, and could have moved out. So it's like, how bad should you feel?
I think that the lure of being on TV, like you think, oh, well, I'll go on TV and I'll tell my story, but you're not necessarily, not everybody can talk when they get in front of a camera. It seems like a little camera shy.
Well,
I'm sure
hopefully
Martha
he's-
McCallum will be able to
Yeah.
pull a little more out of him.
Hopefully he's
Yes.
warmed up for Martha.
He's just so bad at being a deadbeat. It's like, if you want to stay at your parents' home
How do you
forever,
do it,
you can
Pete?
probably figure
Tell
it out.
us, Pete, how do you be a good deadbeat?
Have a little side
Inform
job,
us.
you know.
Side job.
Make them dinner
No, do
once
the
every
di-
couple
Do
no,
some
do the
chores.
dishes.
Do a couple chores you don't really want to
Take
do.
out
It,
the
but you're a
trash.
nerd, you do it, and they give you another year.
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
result. Instead, he's like, I will do nothing.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
you will have to evict me.
Yes.
I mean,
That's
and-
a weird thing, having to go to court
Well,
over
why
your
don't they just
family.
mean,
but why don't you
unbelievable.
just
They tried to
call
evict
the
him.
cops? That's what I would do.
And the
They're very
parent, I mean, how
helpful.
hard is it?
If Ronan comes home, it's going to be open arms.
Could
I
it be
called
that
the police
because
and 6 came over. It was
Here's-
amazing.
I'm going to defend him and say that because we're living longer, 31 is the new 13.
I agree. No, that's what they think.
Whoa.
Gosh. You know
I'm
what?
31 and I'm not 13 years old.
Well, I beg to defer. No,
Hey,
no,
listen,
anyway, no.
Now
But I mean,
I'm very worried.
but no, in the sense that
Ronan's
you're
gonna
living
go
longer, you can stay longer at home.
No, but no, it's a good point. So, like, what is the acceptable age? So let's just say it's 25. If
Yeah.
we say that kids should be on their parents' health insurance till 25, I mean, I don't say that, but the
Ugh.
law says that. Okay, whatever.
26.
26. So 30. Yeah, maybe you're right. If you do,
Yeah.
age.
And I'm for close families,
appreciation.
multi-generational families. All right, okay. They're telling me
Wow,
to shut up.
geez.
Did you hear that?
No.
That was I could.
No, but I can feel it.
Yes, I was like
Bad
getting
energy.
a shock in the ear.
I heard it.
I know. Amazon users up in arms over a new policy. If you are a serial returner, you'll want to listen up.
Oh, wow.
I just went to jerk some time.
Who here on set is guilty of this? Amazon is cracking down on shoppers who return items too frequently, and in some cases, they're outright banning their worst offenders.
Wow.
A spokesperson for the online retailer confirms closing the accounts of users who abuse their 30-day return policy, but they won't specify just how many accounts they've closed. Kimberly,
Yeah,
wow.
wow. Listen, they ain't closing mine down because it is a constant scream. It's like 30 items in the last hour. Amazon Prime.
Thanks,
word.
She was at work, so it wasn't her.
Wasn't me. They don't take that excuse either. Reason for return. It wasn't me. Yeah, it doesn't work. But no, I really don't return because it's just so much
It's a
effort.
hassle.
Yes.
So you need a Peter.
Yeah,
To help you
that's the
return.
thing.
Yeah.
Where can I get my pizza? Pizza, wherefore art thou, pizza? Yeah.
I noticed this story this morning because it was the #1 story trending on the Wall Street Journal for like 2 days. And so I thought, what a first world problem to have that you
Right.
are so worried that you want to find out, like, well, am I going to get banned from Amazon for returning too much?
Are
I
you
don't think I
worried?
will. I don't think I
How
will.
often do you return, Dana?
I don't return all that much from Amazon, I don't think.
I think she has some low-level anxiety about it.
Yes, she does.
though.
She's afraid she's
Yeah.
going to be banned.
I don't know what the metrics are.
I'm not banned for sure.
I only return things that don't feel right when I use them, like underwear and toothbrushes.
Yeah.
So I usually
I
box them up and I send them back with I have my own I have my own cellophane machine.
Deodorant too?
Deodorant as well. I think the percentage of returns has to be large compared to purchases. So if you're a constant cry, then that's it. I predict there will be a new service that returns things for you because we are now just a service culture. I have Seamless to deliver my food. I actually have another service that eats the food. I can't be bothered getting.
So Greg, I think you should copyright that like today.
Yeah, return.
Well, there is one. It's
I
called
return.
TaskRabbit.
What?
That returns your items for you?
Well, yeah.
No, they do like tasks.
Tasks. Like if you like, hey, can you help return this for me? And then they come and do it for you. But you have to pay.
They're a bunch of animals.
I just don't understand it. Is there a lot of money to be made in this industry of ordering and sending back? Otherwise,
No,
it's
I
just
think
a
Hey,
massive,
that's what the guy with no
massive
job
hassle.
from the previous blog.
Yeah.
That's what he could
I
do.
think he
could've
might
done
do
it
that.
for
Business
people.
idea.
But they don't want to say how many people that are doing this because it would be bad for their numbers. And you know, if you
They
release
said,
this, and they'll be like, "Whoa,
what is it?
Amazon's
The
suffering."
returns can be as high as 15 to 30% of purchases. That's
Well,
unbelievable.
yeah, because
to me.
sometimes they send stuff that's broken. That has
They
happened.
do send stuff that's messed up. Like I ordered Ronin T-shirt, like little size, medium boys under T-shirts, and big boys ones came. So then I was had.
You didn't have to return it. I'm right here.
No, I would have been extra small for you, man. Yeah.
Listen, I just think
That's what I wear.
I think Amazon should just warn people before they close. Like right now, they're not warning people. Like warn before you
No,
close
you
my
know
account.
if you're an abuser.
I know. That's why it's
I
the
got
number
cut.
one story on Wall Street Journal.
Yes.
See, that's why Dana's nervous. I think she knows she's a return abuser.
Oh, but we're going to check with Peter.
We have to check on
Right.
this one. Anyway, one more thing's up next. Don't go anywhere.
Well, it's time now for one more thing. Dana, what do you have?
Well, it's been a show, hasn't it?
No.
Let's top it off with this.
Indeed.
Dan Crenshaw, 33 years old, former Navy SEAL, won the Republican primary runoff election in Texas' 2nd Congressional District on Tuesday night. Although Crenshaw won in a landslide on Tuesday, Republican operatives following the race thought he did not have a chance. He's one of the guys that actually ran his district. I don't know if you remember that when I did that as a one more thing. These are all the people that he beat. He is going to win, I think, and it's pretty amazing. So congratulations to another veteran who is on his way to being a member of Congress.
All right, fantastic, great story, and also for following in the serving our country footsteps, Dana, a set of quadruplets, maybe you guys saw this story, in Michigan are now sharing another bond. And if you can believe it, they have all decided to enlist in the military after graduation. Bryce, Rose, Mason, and Nevin Lees of Western Michigan are joining 4 different branches.
Wow.
The high school senior is choosing Navy, Air Force, Air National Guard, and Marines. Siblings and their grandfather and brother-in-law inspired them to serve, and the sister Rose saying, quote, "Ever since I was little, I've always wanted to serve. I just want to help out our world." Now, can you imagine, and the juxtaposition of these 4 amazing siblings and the low life that's like sitting there scamming off his parents?
The 30-year-old?
I can't. Yeah. Anyway, okay.
Very cool.
Greg.
All right, my podcast. You go to foxnewspodcast.com. It's with Dr. Drew. We talk about mental health issues. We talk about violence, and we talk about the opioid crisis. It's actually really entertaining, but with a lot of serious stuff, and I ain't kidding around, so check it out. And I also just tweeted it, so you can find it there. Meanwhile, it's time for Greg's Fox News. A lot of news in the Fox universe. This is upsetting what has happened to Fox right now. What is being done to Fox is wrong. Take a look at this. Here is a fox that had just gotten a rabbit. He got his meal, right? That's his meal. He deserves that. He spent all day getting that. And then an eagle comes and says, "No, I want the rabbit." And the fox has to fight for the rabbit. The eagle doesn't care. And, of course, the eagle lost the meal. So you don't mess with Fox is the bottom line, okay?
We always win.
Do not mess with Fox. We will take hold of the bunny and we won't let go because we're animals.
Are you like trying
We're
to send
animals.
Are you sending a message to Brian Stelter or something?
Yes. Yes, the nation's hall monitor. You watch out.
I just hope that Dr. Drew helped you out. That's
I'm
all
hopeless.
I gotta say. Okay, Pete.
You're right. You don't mess with Fox. I also, it's an unwritten rule. I don't mess with Brian Kilmeade. I do whatever he tells me to do. Turns out today he was out on Long Island for the president's speech. He got an exclusive interview with President Trump behind the scenes.
That must have been tough for him.
He worked hard for it. You know what? Don't hate. He's working hard for that. got after it.
I love
Hating the
Kilmeade.
game.
He
Okay.
got it, and he tuned in tomorrow morning on Fox and Friends. Reaction on North Korea, reaction on MS-13, but also he's chiming in for the first time on the kneeling decision for the NFL. The president central on that. They've got some big comments you're not going to want to miss. Brian Kilmeade worked extremely hard for that interview. I take offense to
No, I know you got to defend Bryant, but I don't have to defend him.
It would be
Frankly,
odd if you did.
he was here yesterday. Was he here yesterday?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. That's enough.
Yeah.
That's
I got
enough.
you
I'll
back,
hold my
Brian. I
breath
got
for
you
the
back.
kneeling comment from the president.
No shooting in the tent.
I love
folks.
Kilmeade. I love. That's why I can make fun of him.
All right.
Him and his hair.
Just when you thought the royal wedding was over, me and Kimberly are still talking about it here on The Five.
Yes.
And this time, instead of letting their beautiful bouquets go to waste, Prince Harry and Princess Meghan Markle put their floral arrangements to good use. After the royal wedding at Windsor Castle on Saturday, the nuptials, they donated the flowers to St. Joseph's Hospice in London.
Nice.
And this is a beautiful woman holding these flowers. And the hospice tweeted the following: "Today, we got a very special delivery. Beautiful bouquet